Okay, this is Colin Thompson on the 27th of January, interviewing Dr. Solomon Smith. So to start with, could you give me your full name and date of birth, please?
Solomon K. Smith, and my birth date is August 1st, 1971.
So while you were in the military, what was your official job?
I was actually infantry first. I was actually an anti-tank specialist. And then as time went on, I went into security teams, and then I became a scout sniper. There's
And
a
this-
couple MOSs there, but I'm missing. But it was all infantry, basically.
Okay. And this was which branch?
Marine Corps.
Marine Corps. Okay. So presumably, as part of your service, you did deploy, yes?
Yes.
About when?
So I was in the service from '89 to '93, and we did quite a few of deployments. The biggest one where we got care packages was during the first Desert Shield Desert Storm.
Okay. So when you were deployed, how would mail delivery typically work?
Usually it would be sporadic, came in a big bag, and sometimes, like when we were in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, we got it pretty much every day. When we were in deployed for Desert Shield Desert Storm, it was about every 3 days to a week.
And like, how would it actually work? I mean, you mentioned that it would arrive in a big bag, but
It usually went to headquarters and then would be distributed to us, so to our unit. So the unit I was in, we were deployed as platoons, and we worked with the Navy. We're a naval asset. Marine Corps is a naval asset. So we would get it usually from whoever the naval command, wherever we were, usually got it through them. So it could be on a ship, it could be at a naval base. This biggest one was when I was in Sicily, Sigonella, Sicily. We got it directly from the headquarters for the Navy. And I was actually, as a young NCO, I actually was one of the people who would go over. You go over to headquarters. They usually called us as mail came. We'd go over for mail call, collect the platoon's bag, and it was almost always a bag, and then you brought it back to the platoon, and then it distributed, usually depending on where people were, because we would go out and do different operations based on fire team squads, and then sometimes as a platoon. If everybody was there, they'd do a big mail call. If one group was there, you would just do a squad or a fire team mail call. It ends up being about every 3 days, every week, usually.
okay. So did you ever send anything in the other direction back home?
Certainly wrote, to family and friends. Well, really just family. But it was whenever you put something together, you wrote it up. You could get, you could buy stuff at the commissary to send stuff home, and postcards. Especially when we were in Sicily, I really got to see a lot of the island. So every time I went somewhere, I sent stuff home.
And how would that work exactly?
Because we were on a naval base, they have a post office, so you basically just go to the post office and send it off.
Okay. So during your various deployments, did you actually receive packages from home?
A couple. I didn't get as much as other people, but yeah, around holidays and things like that, we would get them.
Okay. Is there anything in particular that you remember receiving?
Food. You always get the foods you like, the candy you like, the things like that.
What are some examples?
I can't even tell you back then. It was whatever was back then. Like I guess Skittles and Starburst would be candy, and outside of that, just any kind of food my mom thought I would want or would like, she'd send it, throw it in the care package. They sometimes threw books in there or things like that.
Okay. Do you remember anything in particular that other people received?
It was pretty much the same thing. Some people, especially if they smoked or would dip, they would get those kinds of things in the box. But other than that, it was just whatever thing that somebody thought they would want is what was sent. People who had kids often got artwork and cards and things from their children.
Okay. So you mentioned Skittles and cookies. Was there anything else, like food-wise, that you remember that was a staple?
Not particularly. It really just depended on the person and who was sending it. And so they either made something or they bought something and sent it. And I don't remember. My mom would just send them whenever she got around to it. So it wasn't like a prepared thing or anything like that. And I think some people got more stuff for different times, especially married people. Often, if they had kids, they had a spouse that was sending stuff, trying to keep them in the loop. And this was well before cell phones and all that. So if you were going to talk to your family, unless you were on a base, you would have to go to an area where they would have facilities set up to call, and they didn't even have video facilities. You would be able to call, and it was very spotty. It would cut out on you in the middle of the calls. So I personally didn't call that much, but it was just, I didn't have any, a spouse and kids and all that stuff at the time.
Okay. So you mentioned that calling was a bit spotty, so presumably that means that letters were still very heavily used?
Definitely. I mean, if you were having contact with back home, it was usually going through, writing letters and getting letters back from them.
Okay. And were you familiar with whether these would be handwritten? Would they typically be typed?
I think it would just depend on the person. I mean, I didn't have access to a computer at that time. We didn't, so all these things we have today didn't exist. So when I wrote stuff, it was writing on a postcard or writing on, whatever notebook paper or whatever paper I could get a hold of and sending it off. I hate to say I probably was not very good about doing that very often. Postcards I did, but not the other.
Okay. So were there any, you mentioned that you don't really remember them, but is there any particular package that you remember as being a favorite from your career?
I remember during Christmas we got one of the soldiers in my squad. I was a squad leader. I think it was his wife or his mom sent a small Christmas tree, and we had little ornaments, and so we could have like a little Christmas thing. And she sent his favorite Christmas cookies. I remember that very distinctly. We had a little had a little party and had fun with it because we had this like stuff, from home. Because otherwise we were focused on work, and you really kind of forgot the holiday was even there. I mean, you knew it there because you were homesick, but you didn't know it was there. Like it wasn't readily on your mind.
Okay. So would it be fair, in your opinion at least, to characterize packages as a significant morale booster?
I would say it was a tremendous morale booster. I mean, and it just wasn't just a connection back with home and family. It gave you a connection back to, the country you were actually deployed because of. And I think that was always very important for people. Plus, everybody was excited when other people got packages. There was the bad things when people would get bad information, in letters. Maybe a spouse broke up with them or a girlfriend or whatever. But, usually it was good stuff, and we were always really happy. You're happy for your friends, and then if they got good treats and shared them, you got to have some good treats too.
So was that common, sharing items received?
Definitely, because as close as somebody might know you, they may think you like a Snickers and you really like a Milky Way, right? And so they send you something you don't like, you definitely would give it to somebody who did. Plus, if you got a package and nobody else did, you feel bad if you're the only one eating them, so you shared them around quite a bit.
Okay. So in your career, did you ever receive packages from strangers?
There were a couple times where we received, because this is the first Desert Shield After the Storm, there was a real emphasis on trying to support the troops. And so we got a couple packages from, it wasn't sent to individuals, it would be sent to the unit. We got packages from a couple different churches. We got packages from one of the guys, his kid's school sent a care package, which was like little notes and letters and artwork for everybody. So definitely, we did get some from outside sources.
Could you tell me a little bit more about those, or?
Usually the ones that came from different church affiliations, so, they'd throw a Bible in there, maybe some other literature, but it was just, different things you might need. They'd send toiletries and foodstuffs, and actually a lot of like cards and things to entertain us. But they were also really good about sending like envelopes that were already stamped and letter writing material so you could keep in contact with your family. We always really enjoyed getting those because there was lots of different stuff. And the one we got from the kids was awesome because a lot of us wrote the kids. as pen pals. And so for a little bit of time, you were corresponding with these, kids back home, and it was fun.
So was it just those two times that happened, or did it happen more?
It was a handful of times. I couldn't. I mean, this is more than 20 years ago, so I can't. I don't know the exact details. I couldn't even tell you who it was anymore in terms of what churches or what we got it from. I mean, it was a couple different affiliations, and we got them. And I think what they did is they put together 100 packages and just send them off to 100 units, kind of thing, or the military distributed them. I don't know how we were selected. I just remember getting it. And, it was pretty neat.
Okay. So, would you say that these unit level packages were they better in terms of making people feel connected to back home than individual letters or packages from family would be, or would you say that the family was
I would
stronger?
think it was the family ones that were probably the most important. I mean, it wasn't a really big deal for me, but it was, something you got and you liked it, and it was always neat when people got stuff and to see what they got and share stuff. But I think I didn't have when you have a wife and children, I think that the way you stay connected is through these kinds of things, and at least back then. And so I think it had tremendous meaning to them when they got them. And maybe I probably wasn't as close to my family as others, so I mean, it's nice to get some from my mom, but I mean, it wasn't like I wasn't gonna, put me on the cloud nine for the next month. Like it was neat. I got it, wrote her back, said, thank you, kind of thing. But I was really, young and focused on my work and what we were doing.
Okay. So how do you or why do you think that these organizations and these schools, then the churches, why do you think they were so interested in sending things to units overseas?
I mean, I think there's a history involved in this. I mean, I think the war that we were involved in before this, Vietnam, the soldiers weren't supported from home, I think, as much, and because of it, and there was not a good feeling for them when they got back. And I think that probably was part of it. There was a huge effort. I remember because being in the States and people being supportive. People would buy you a beer when you were out, or they'd buy your meal when you were at dinner, or at dinner with friends. People were just trying very hard to be supportive, and so I think that was a big part of what was happening.
So, just to clarify, that's the major reason is because looking back, people have been less supportive of troops, and knowing the fallout from like the Vietnam era and how people were treated, they wanted to
I think that people wanted to show support for the troops. We do it today as well, where there's just an outpouring of support. You're trying to support the troops for what they're doing, defending, America's democracy, all these kinds of things. I mean, you hear it repeatedly today, and I think that was really starting back then. It was a really strong movement within society, and I think that was a big part of it. I mean, it doesn't lessen the fact that people were nice and sending their stuff, but I think there was a more concerted effort to start doing that as opposed to what had happened before.
Okay. So, do you think modern technology and the prevalence of like phones and easy access to computers, do you think that's lessening the impact of receiving things from home?
I mean, I really wouldn't know. When I was in service, I was out by 1994. So we still didn't have, like, the only thing I had was a beeper, and it was, I actually had one through work because if we got called, we had to be able to leave within 24 hours notice. So I don't know. I mean, the technology we had, there was often computers at the library if you were on the base, and so you could send emails, but not many people did that back then. And like cell phones, all those things didn't exist. I would think, I mean, pretty much anywhere you are in the world now, you can pop up your phone, and if you got a signal, you can call home. And you can video call and all those things. And I think certainly makes it easier to stay connected with home and with family. I don't know if it makes life easy for the military, but I mean, I think it makes it, in terms of the individual, probably does make it easier. I don't know if they get care packages like they used to. I do know, the church that we're affiliated with, our church at various times has put together care packages for servicemen abroad. So it certainly, organizations are probably still doing it. And the need is always there. I mean, it's not always easy to get access to toiletries and things like that, toothpaste and soap and things, and all the little food things that people like. So I don't know that there would be a time when it would ever be unwanted by the soldiers abroad.
You mentioned that your own church occasionally sends things out. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Just that they do that. I mean, I don't even remember the last one they did, but I know, there's always, they do a lot of different service kind of projects, and that's always a service project that's there. They also have a homeless kitchen, right? So they do different kinds of service things. And they think they did one. They did one last year, but I don't remember the details of it. And I think my kids did it. I wasn't there.
Okay. So, in your experience throughout your deployments, as a conflict went on, did you notice a lessening frequency of receiving things from home?
I can't say that I was, I was only in for a little over 4 years, so I can't really say that the conflicts, there was no one conflict during that time. We were kind of in and out, different problems. We got mail as we got mail, and sometimes I can remember we were actually when we were in Haiti, we were doing a repatriation of individuals boat people back to Haiti. We actually were deployed. We were there for 3 months. Nobody got any mail, and then when we got back to the States, we got a big bag of mail. So, it just depended on when it was. I don't know if there was if it's lessened. I wasn't in a conflict long enough to experience it. I think people probably involved with Afghanistan and Iraq today would have a better idea, I would think.
Okay. So you mentioned that you weren't involved in your church effort and that toiletries are always wanted. Say you were going to put something together yourself, like today, what would you put in it?
I would probably get a baggie and put, soap and shampoo, little shampoos and conditioners and toothpaste and probably a toothbrush in it, and then fill it with foods, maybe a Coke or something.
Are there any foods in particular?
Whatever readily came to hand, bags of chips or, candies and stuff. Things that are hard to get access to if you're in a foreign land or a foreign place.
Okay.
But things that remind you of home, too. Like, they have Coca-Cola pretty much everywhere, but it doesn't always taste like Coca-Cola in the States. And so being able to get a Coke, that's reminds you of home is always nice.
Okay. So is there anything that comes to mind that you wanted to talk about regarding the topic? Or
not really. I think you've asked good questions. You've hit a lot of the big stuff. And again, sadly, it was long enough ago that a lot of it are distant memories that almost need to be prompted for me to even remember what to say, to be honest. I hate to say.
All right. Well, thank you greatly then. I greatly appreciate you being willing to participate.